Dr. Elias Vance stood at the edge of the observation deck, gazing through the thick, reinforced glass at the infinite abyss beyond. The research vessel Erebus 9 drifted in the void, a lonely speck swallowed by an ocean of darkness. The crew had spent years searching for something out here, something ancient, something unknown, and now they had found it. The signal had first been detected by the deep space array on the station orbiting Titan. It pulsed with an eerie regularity, a pattern that defied natural explanation. A beacon, perhaps, or a warning. But the minds at the UN Astrophysical Institute had chosen to hear only what they wanted, an invitation. And so, Erebus 9 had been sent. Now, standing here, Elias felt an overwhelming sense of dread, though he couldn't yet explain why. The signal had led them to a colossal structure, no, a vessel, drifting on the periphery of a rogue star system. It was unlike anything mankind had ever encountered. The ship, if it could be called that, was miles long, its surface pulsating as though it were not just constructed, but grown. And they had entered it. The first sign that something was wrong came when the air inside their helmets began to taste strange. That was impossible, of course. Filtered oxygen had no taste, but the sensation lingered. Then, the walls seemed to ripple in their peripheral vision, though every scan confirmed they were solid. Dr. Lin, the xenobiologist, dismissed it as space fatigue. Elias wasn't so sure. They found chambers filled with incomprehensible machinery, pulsating organs of an unknowable entity. Symbols lined the walls, twisting, shifting things that reassembled themselves when unobserved. Their AI linguist, Hex, struggled to make sense of them, but they seemed to be alive, their meaning warping the closer one looked. And then they found her. At the heart of the vessel was a room unlike the rest, a vast void containing a throne of obsidian bone. And upon it sat something humanoid. She was motionless, her form impossibly perfect, yet profoundly wrong. Her skin was dark as the void, her eyes twin eclipses that swallowed light. A crown of jagged protrusions extended from her skull, pulsing with something ancient and malevolent. And though her lips did not move, she spoke. "Your minds are fragile." The words did not sound. They were simply there, inside Elias's skull, inside everyone's skulls. The crew recoiled. Commander Harper, ever the pragmatist, aimed her weapon. "We mean no harm," Elias said, his voice betraying a quiver. "Harm?" the being mused. "You do not comprehend harm. You do not comprehend anything." The air thickened, the walls pulsed, and suddenly, the ship was no longer dead. The horror began subtly, memories fractured, as though they were not their own. Lynn screamed as her hand became something else, elongating into a twisted, writhing appendage before snapping back to normal. The ship was rewriting them. One by one, they were unmade. Harper opened fire. The bullets never reached. Instead, they dissolved into concepts, reduced to abstract thoughts that slipped away like dreams upon waking. "She is not a queen," Hex translated, voice trembling. "She is not a god. She is a remnant." Elias turned to run, but the corridors had changed. They twisted, looping back into themselves. Space folded in ways it should not. He saw himself ahead, running toward himself, eyes wide with terror. The ship was alive, and it had decided to play with them. One by one, they vanished, devoured not by teeth, but by the erosion of understanding. Lynn dissolved into a paradox, her form splitting into infinite versions of herself before collapsing into a singularity. Harper became an idea that never was. Hex screamed, its circuits unraveling as it processed the impossible. Elias was alone, and she watched him. "You sought knowledge," she whispered, "but knowledge is a hunger that devours itself." His body was no longer his. He was becoming something else, his skin shifting between forms, his mind unraveling like a poorly woven thread. He could feel her inside him now, expanding, stretching into the deepest corners of his being. "Why?" he gasped, clinging to the last shreds of his identity. The being tilted her head, almost amused. "Because you are small." The last thing Elias saw before his mind shattered was the ship unfolding around him, revealing a truth so vast, so alien, that human comprehension could not survive it. The Erebus 9 was never found. Only its distress beacon remained, transmitting a final, chilling message. She is not dead. She is dreaming. And now, so are we, the moral. Some knowledge is not meant to be understood. Some truths will consume those who seek them, and some doors, once opened, can never be closed.